All right, everybody, we get ready to get started? Yeah! Woo. That was, I guess you haven't found the coffee yet. Downstairs. Are we ready to get started? Yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you for coming to the Higher Ed Summit here at DrupalCon. Where's my little slider? There it is. So good morning. You've obviously found it. Hopefully you found the Wi-Fi. Though I'm going to be the fuddy-duddy that asks, unless you're taking notes, keep your laptop closed. You don't want to be distracted by work. You want to be involved with everybody. Ooh, there was a transition. So I just get to be the face for today, but the Higher Ed Summit, if they can stand up, committee team, Megan, Beth, Tyler, and myself. We put a lot of work into this. Hopefully it goes well. This is our second year running the Higher Ed Summit, so hopefully you like it. And we took your feedback from last year, and we'll take your feedback from this year after today. I wish I didn't have transitions. I thought I'd turn those off. So our goal for today, when we were working together as a group, was to provide an environment that builds and supports the Drupal Higher Ed community. That's our goal for today with the summit, is to make sure that happens. So to make that happen, we needed sponsors. So thank you to our summit sponsors, Acquia, Evolving Web, and Pantheon. They all have some talks today to show off some of the work they've been doing in higher ed. So thank you for helping make this happen. We can give them a round of applause. So we have a goal for today. I'm giving everybody here 2 goals for today, all right? So I'm a manager, so I give out goals. So first and foremost, to make and follow up with 1 new connection today, right? We want to build a community. So that's your first goal, is you need to make a new connection today. Your second goal is to bring back 1 new learning, idea, or inspiration for your team/institution that you learned today. So I'm hoping you can complete those 2 goals. Follow up with a connection throughout the conference. That's what's great about having the summits for the first day, is you get to meet a smaller group of people that you can connect with the rest of the week. So does everyone feel like these are achievable goals?
Certainly.
Yes. Certainly. Thank you. So to make that happen, I'm going to tell you, do not sit with your team. So if you're nice and settled at your table, all comfortable with your team, get up and move around, please. Chop, chop. I mean it. Because we want to communicate. Your team knows your problems. They know your solutions. They know what you're working on and what you're hoping to work on. But the other people at other institutions don't have that knowledge, so we want to share our knowledge. So I'm going to ask you to move around. And we'll have plenty of other chances to get up and move tables. So while you do that, I'll put up the agenda for today. I'm making you move. I told you I'm a fuddy-duddy, so. Wow, the moving is much more silent than I thought it would be, so I can keep going. So we have a packed day today. We have an agenda up here for the morning. We're going to do some opening remarks, which is this. And then we're going to have, throughout the day, 4 lightning talks. These are 20-minute presentations from our wonderful speakers, so thank you to all our speakers for today. And we're going to follow up each talk with a table discussion. We did something similar last year, so that's why I asked you to move, not be with your team. So each table discussion is related to the topic for the lightning talk, so it'll give you a chance to talk about what your own institution is doing or other questions you have and talk about that topic. We're also going to have a couple breaks, and right before lunch we're going to have table boffs. So these are kind of like birds of a feather, but we're just going to do it in groups of tables. And we have table leaders for leading different topics. So thank you to our table leaders for doing that. Now lunch from 12 to 1 is downstairs, where hopefully you found the coffee. That's where it will be. You can grab your lunch. It's a box lunch. Bring it back here and eat it here and chat and converse with people there. Maybe continue your BOF conversations. And then in the afternoon, we'll have some more lightning talks, another break, some sponsor talks. And then we're going to end the day with a panel discussion from all our speakers today to ask them some of the following up questions we have from the community. Sound good? Yeah, all right. And look, I'm right on time. I love it. All right, so our first lightning talk today is from Tina Miller. It's from Buzzwords to Impact, Harnessing AI for Inclusive Innovation. And I'm going to turn it over to Tina. I'll give you the presenter view.
Go Sun Devils!
Woo!
And there you go.
Can I just advance it that way?
Oh, there you go.
Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Let's give Mike a round of applause. He made you move so quickly. I'm Tina Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Creative and Communications at Arizona State University. I actually work in the IT division called Enterprise Technology. How many Sun Devils are in the crowd? I heard a couple. Any? Okay. Woo, okay, right, go Devils. I also saw somebody from the University of Arizona. At least there's a couple. Okay, go Wildcats. My older son has his undergrad from U of A, and now he's getting his law degree from ASU. But he is a Wildcat through and through. Oh, and by the way, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. So let's give a round of applause for all of us who are celebrating our pronouns. Yes. All right. So a little bit about me. I have been in the higher ed industry or sector for probably about 18, 19 years. And so I love higher ed. I'm a first-gen college grad, and so I really do believe that higher ed has transformed my life, and I believe that higher ed is essential, and it is something that we all need to continue to grow and evolve. So I first started out, I'm a graduate of the University of Missouri in Columbia, their School of Journalism, and my first job out of college, I drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And I wouldn't have had that would not have been possible had I not gone to the University of Missouri. And so that has kind of launched my career in PR, and it was buns of fun. I traveled 345 days out of the year, brings miles of smiles and relishing to catch up with the kids. And that's enough hot dog puns this early in the morning. So some of our key takeaways, I have about 20 minutes, now I have about 19, is to identify and overcome AI integration challenges, elevate team capabilities, and lead AI in your organization. The other takeaway is, for the life of me, I cannot figure out why we wave to each other at the end of a Zoom call, but when we physically leave a room, we never wave bye to people. So when you're leaving the room, just wave bye to me, and then I'll feel much better. So about ASU, and I love this conference because it's focused on inclusivity, and at Arizona State University, our charter is rooted in inclusivity. And so for us, we measure our success by who we include, not who we exclude. And so, yes. So let's give a round of applause for that. Yeah. And so this is our charter. It will never change. We are all about inclusivity. If there is anybody who wants an opportunity to get a higher ed, have a higher ed journey, Arizona State University is there for them. Pardon me. We have 181,000 students at any given time, 5,400 faculty members, and about, excuse me, pardon me, I'm so sorry, and about 20,000 staff members. So we're really excited about this. This 181,000 students is new to us. We have about, I would say about 80,000 of those, 70,000 of those are actually on ground at one of our 4 campuses in Phoenix. And then we have about another a little less than 100,000 that are actually online, at ASU Online. So some of the guiding principles, you've probably heard, oh, I thought they were clapping for me. Sorry. Anyway, I heard clapping over there. So you've probably heard, ASU is leading in this AI space. And so some of our guiding tenets are, number one, we will not create any type of an AI platform or any kind of technology unless it's rooted in principled innovation. And principled innovation is what we do at ASU to make sure that we do no harm to the communities that we are serving. We can ask ourselves, we should innovate, but why? And we continually ask those questions, how can we continue to bring the most value with the least amount of harm? Also shaping tomorrow's innovations. We are the #1 university in the country 10 years in a row for being innovative. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to innovate as much as we can and as quickly as we can. Also, we all know AI is about empowering creativity. And we want to make sure, again, because of our charter, that we're making this technology accessible for everybody. Now, what I'm talking about today is the call for leadership. And the reason why for AI it's so important as leaders that we embrace this. And here's some stats from the 2024 EDUCAUSE AI landscape study, where we can all agree that AI is a great disruptor. Nearly 80% of employees expect AI to affect 20 hours of their work week. Also, institutions that have FOMO, they have a fear of missing out. Like if they don't jump on the bandwagon, how long is it going to take to implement this technology? And the impact. ASU is all about impact. I'll show you that in a little while. But for ASU, we will not do anything with AI unless it has an impact. And then there does seem to be in higher ed a tentative but upbeat with leaders cautiously optimistic about AI. But here's the truth, and I think we all know this. No one has this figured out yet. If you have AI figured out yet, please raise your hand because I'll sit with you at the table during the break. Yeah, see, okay, that's what I thought. Anyway, but that's where we're all working together, and that's like in higher ed, we have a responsibility to our students to make sure that they are prepared for the workforce. And so, again, it's like, how are we introducing this to faculty, staff, students, our community? Now, and these are some of the challenges that I've overcame with integration on my team. But first of all, I want to give an example. Anybody was around in the 70s? I mean, there's probably a couple of us, just me. Okay, thank you for being brave and raising your hand. Anyway, so back in the mid 70s, there's this thing called a calculator. And so teachers, the calculators, believe it or not, were actually pretty expensive by 1970 standards. And so they wanted to bring calculators to the schools for middle school students and junior high students. And some teachers didn't want to do it because they felt that it would make students lazy. It would make them over-dependent on technology. And even this math teacher said, well, what happens when the battery runs out? And so we all know that's not going to happen. But anyway, the point I'm making here is that this was also a technology that people were concerned about, that they were going to bring, and it was going to make people lazy and make things obsolete. And now, as you know, we have our calculators on our phones, and if you're an accountant, you can't even do anything without a calculator. And I think the AI is the same thing. It is, next thing here, it's not so much a problem to be solved, but instead it's a powerful ally in our efforts to make education meaningfully universal. And so here are some of the issues that I had and my obstacles with my team. First of all is some of my team members were like, I'm fine without using AI. I'm good. Like I'm comfortable with how things have been. One of my team members said, this is too complicated. I don't get this. I just want to go back to, searching on Google. Another team member I heard said, I'm worrying about my privacy. I think that's something that we can all agree on, that we do want to make sure that the AI we do is responsible and that it's safe and secure. Here's another one, and this is a theme. So I have created, and I'll show you in a second here, a couple minutes at least. I created the AI Beacon Network, which is a consortium of marketing and communications professionals in higher ed across the country. And one of the number one things, there's about 120 universities in this network, and they're all saying the same thing, is we don't know how, we need training, but we're not quite sure what. We're not quite sure what training we should bring. And so even at Arizona State University, we started out of the gate right away with a course that we gave to our faculty and staff. I think about 4,000 people have already gone through it. And we have some universities that have actually used our program to model it to train their employees. But that's a big issue right now in higher ed, is training. It's like, what can you train? What should we train? Now, here's how I overcame some of those obstacles. So number one, I provided a compelling case for change to my team. So I started at Enterprise Technology at ASU in the summer of '23, and I told my team, I have 9 members on my team, and I told them by the end of October, I want you all to be using at least 3 Gen AI tools. I have it in my budget. ASU's atmosphere is experiment, fail fast, learn from it, keep moving on. And so I wanted to create that change because I knew my team, because we're graphic designers, we're photographers, videographers, storytellers. I wanted to make sure that we were all subject matter experts, because our CIO, Lev Gonick, was told by President Crow, you're in charge of AI. So then Lev came to me and said, Tina, you're in charge of communicating AI. And so I wanted to make sure that my team members were all subject matter experts, because we are the team that's responsible for communicating about AI internally and externally at ASU. Also, find a friend. Like, I have one member on my team, she's a Gen Z, love her, and she is so excited. She's always bringing new ideas and infusing the team. So find a friend, find somebody on your team that's just excited about this as you are. Also, like I said, our atmosphere, experiment, fail, learn, reiterate. We don't punish people for we try tools. There's tools that my team has tried, and it's like, it's okay. But at least we're trying and experimenting, and that's what I would suggest to all of you, is just continue to learn these tools, try things. If it doesn't work, fine. Just move on and try something else. But this technology is moving so quickly that I think eventually a lot of these models are kind of the same thing. You just have to determine which model you want to use for your purposes. And again, as a leader, we have to model the way. We're the ones out there that need to be learning this and bringing this back to our teams. So when I started at Enterprise Technology, the only thing I knew about AI was that I can ask Alexa to order toilet paper for me. I did not know anything else. And so I just jumped in. I started listening to podcasts. I listened to Hard Fork with Kevin Roos and Casey Newton. If any of you guys don't, they're wonderful. They're really funny. I love them. I also listened to the Marketing AI show, which is from the Marketing AI Institute, and Paul Reitzer, they're based out of Cleveland. That's another great podcast. But I started listening to podcasts. I started reading books. I started having conversations with like-minded people because I wanted to make sure that I knew everything I could about AI so I could bring that to my team, because I did not want my team to be caught flat-footed. And if any of you are out there in marketing and communications at your university, then you know that when you do eventually implement this, they're going to come to you first. Because they're going to say, how do we communicate this? How do we market this? How do we let everybody know that this is happening? And so I always tell my marketing and communications colleagues to be ready, to start experimenting in your own team, even if you're not doing it at a university level. Anybody remember Back to the Future? Yes? Okay, for those of us Gen Xers too. And so, again, where we're going, we don't need roads, because this technology is something that, as we all know, is moving so quickly that there is an opportunity there to kind of define your future and what you want to do. And so how can you elevate team capabilities? So one of the things that we talk about a lot at Arizona State University is it's not just about being literate. It's about being fluent. We can all prompt. We can all pull up ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Claude or whatever you're using and ask questions. We all know that. We all know you can redo your emails or you can read a spreadsheet. And that's great. But how are we being fluent? How are we taking these tools, taking these ideas, this creativity, and using it in better ways for better reasoning, strategic abilities? And that's what we need to make sure that our students are learning too. It's not just that you can use the tools, it's how are you using the tools for the greater good, for strategic ability. And so that's what we're doing, is if we are not graduating students who understand this AI, then we're doing a grave disservice to our students, because when they get into the workforce, they might be leading some of this in AI, or at least they'll be able to assimilate into a workforce that's using AI. And I do think there are, at ASU, there probably are like 3 different groups. We have faculty who embrace it, and they have it, and it's ingrained into their curriculum. We also have faculty who, some of them are like, you can use it for idea generation, but you can't use it for writing papers. And then we have some faculty that is not acknowledging it, they're just not ready to implement it into their teams. But I would say that overall, for us at ASU, it's about student success. So here's a little bit of a blueprint about how I introduced this to my team. So first of all, I identified opportunities and goals. And I said, okay, what are some of the things that we're doing that's repetitive, or things that we can do on the team that we might be able to automate? And then we assess the readiness and the skills. Are you ready? What other training might you need? And then we selected the right tools and platforms. And then we started with a pilot project. We started with a project called Spin Cycle, which I spun up on our own platforms that we do. And so for Spin Cycle, I took all of the stories that we've had in the past 2 years. We're very big on storytelling at Enterprise Technology. And so we created this bot. So we can go in there, and if we have a story that we wrote about some type of, a professor that was doing something with AI, we can go in, see what that story was, maybe do a follow-up story, get the quote from the professor. And we've had so many projects since then, which I'll show you in a second. And then train the team and foster a collaborative culture. That's what we're doing here today. And it was the same thing I did with my team. I started meeting individually with them one-on-one to say, what are your challenges? What are you afraid of? What about this technology excites you? Because I wanted everyone on my team to know that my expectation was that they were actually going to start using AI, and that I would support them no matter what. And then again, where we're at right now is monitoring, evaluating, reiterating. Here's some of the tools that we use for writing and editing and content, creative design, and video and audio. So the My AI Builder is actually our own platform. So we have an AI acceleration team. It's the first of its kind in higher ed at ASU. We're really proud of that. There's about 30 to 40 technologists, and it's led by my colleague Elizabeth Riley. And so her technologists are constantly building platforms, looking at things. So we have our own platform. If you go to ai.asu.edu, you can see it's the first tab on the left. It says Technical Foundation, and you can learn all about the technical foundations and the platforms that we're building. Here's some of our use cases. Number one, alphabetize. So I had this whole list, and I put it in, and I was like, oh, it can alphabetize. So first one. But here's some of the things that we've done. We built a lot of custom GPTs. Another one, you heard me mention Lev Gonick, our CIO. And so I did one for him called the Gonick Guru. I loaded all of his transcripts, media interviews, papers he's written, all of that, and made this GPT on ChatGPT. We have ChatGPT EDU. Which originally was the enterprise model. But anyway, he loves it. He goes in, asks himself questions all the time. And so it's helpful for us because when we're drafting press releases or stories, we can say, hey, what does Lev Gonick think about this? And the Gonick Guru will give an answer, and he's like, and Lev, the real Lev, is like, that's actually pretty good. So that's an easy thing to do, is like to spin up a bot, and especially if you're in marketing communications and you have a leader that you're constantly writing things about, might help you to do a bot. But anyway, so here's some ideas. I'm not going to get, Mike, how much time do I have left? 5. Oh, okay. All right. So lead effective AI initiatives. So again, it's about you taking the lead. It's about you learning, and that's why you all are here today. But as leaders, if we're not out there finding out what's going on and bringing it back to our teams, we're doing them a grave disservice. And so how to lead AI in your organization. Here are the things that I've learned that I'm sharing with you. So it's about navigating the fascination, the fear, and the future about AI, because I do think we can all agree it's kind of a mixture of all these things. It just depends on the day. And so explore your curiosity and model a growth mindset. In higher ed, we talk a lot about growth mindset, and that's really important, is to make sure that we're constantly learning and growing and sharing. And again, learn, share, innovate, reiterate. Secure a seat at the table. And if you don't have a seat at the table, set your own. Find like-minded people that you can start working with. I'm fortunate that I sit at the table. We have a meeting every other week with Lev Gonick, a couple of our deputy CIOs, my colleague Elizabeth Riley, and myself, and we talk about, okay, what are the things happening at ASU? What are the things that I need to promote? Because my team's responsibility is promoting the value of our division, but also AI across our community. Engage in meaningful dialogue with kindred spirits. Excuse me, that we're doing that today. Look for gaps and fill them. Encourage your team to ethically explore AI tools. We do have a process, I'm sure all of you do too, where you have to put it through a vetting process before you can introduce these tools. Elevate your team's expertise and share with others. What I've done is my graphic designer went out and researched and found there was a group that did a case study in the UK about how you should depict AI. Don't use blue, don't use the robot with the human hand. There was a bunch of things. And so she shared that with the brand team at ASU, and then she started doing presentations and sharing that with others around our community about the right and the wrong way to depict AI. And then, as always, remain flexible and adaptive. This is my team. So again, yes, we are all, it's an all-women team. I don't know how it turned out that way, but it did. But, that's how it is. And so really, we're all storytellers. And whether it's telling the story through writing a story, graphic design, or even doing videos, we're all storytellers because we want to make sure that we keep the human in the center. Yes, this technology is wonderful, but we still need to make sure that humans are the ones that are running it. So here's a couple other things. You can get your phone out. So my team, we did the AI journey. It's a 74-page book of our journey so far with AI, and so you can take a screenshot of that. We're actually working on another one that we're going to publish in 2 weeks at ASU GSB, which is a major ed tech conference in San Diego. And then also, again, our website, ai.asu.edu. My team created this website. We manage this website, and we're really proud of it. It is the single source of truth for AI at ASU. We have about 1,000 new and unique visitors, and the sites are built on Drupal. So anyway, there we go. And then we do have some stories. Like I said, we're storytellers, and so if you want to learn more about the stories that we tell, when I came to this team back in the summer of 23, maybe 1 out of 4 stories were about AI, and that's really how we started talking about AI at ASU. So we just started telling stories, and now we're about 1 out of every 2 stories. If you are in marketing, anybody here in marketing communications in higher ed? Okay, good. Okay, great. There are some. Okay, wonderful. So you're my kind. Anyway, so this is the Beacon Network that I created. So there's about 120 of us. We meet monthly Thursdays at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, because Arizona we don't change, which is part of our problem. Anyway, and so, but anyway, it's a great thing. We meet for an hour, and typically we have one member who will talk about a tool that they use that will help with their marketing and communications, and then we also usually do a strategy. We have a member talk about a strategy that they've implemented, and so I have people in the group everywhere from New York University to the University of California, Washington State University, Harvard, Yale, and so we're really a fun group of people, and it's really one of the only things that I can tell that actually is supportive for marketers and communicators in higher ed. Anyway, and this is my LinkedIn. Please follow me. I always am posting content about things. I don't really post a lot of cat videos, although I do like those. But anyway, so that is my presentation. I think that's it. So, okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope that I'll meet you individually, and go Devils and go Cats. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry.
Everybody wave at her.
Everybody.
Oh, hey, I think I'm staying. So.
She gave that great talk, and you want her to leave? That's
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
all right. So now that was awesome, and now it's time for all you to turn to each other and continue talking about this subject. So we have 20 minutes to do. I think it's 20 minutes. Yeah, to do this. I don't like slide transitions. I have to take those off. So for our table discussions, Tina has helped collaborate 3 starting questions. These aren't the only things you have to discuss, but along the subject of AI. So turn to your table mates, pick one of these questions to try to answer, and start talking about it. So I need to hear a lot of chit-chat. All right, we're going to start winding down those conversations.
And if someone sits there, it should move again. I wanted to go ask somebody when people lean really into the mic, like she was excited, it is so loud for these.
Right there. All right, good to know.
So I don't know if there's. I'll go check in.
Wow, look at you settled down right on time. Give yourself a round of applause for that. I hope that was a great first table discussion. And next we're going to have Evolving Web come, one of our wonderful sponsors, in and give us a presentation next. So I will unplug.
Okay. Oh. All right, thanks for joining us. We're so excited to be here in Georgia to present about the work we're doing for Georgia Gwinnett College, working on the discovery of their new website. And this presentation today is about a work in progress. So it's fun because the project's not done, but we're going to be presenting about our discovery and how we've been working with them. So we'll introduce ourselves. My name's Suzanne Dergacheva. I'm one of the co-founders of Evolving Web, and I also do marketing for Drupal. So if you're interested in that, you can come talk to me later in the week, and this is my colleague.
Hi, I'm Rich Lawson, an Associate Director of Technology at Evolving Web. And I've been working with Drupal for over 16 years now, and on the higher ed side, both from an agency perspective and working directly with universities for most of my career. So really happy to be here.
And I'll introduce Evolving Web if you haven't heard of us. We're an agency. You can come meet us at the trade show later in the week. We do specialize in Drupal and have a lot of higher ed clients. We also run an event series called Evolve Drupal, and we're doing one in Boston in June. So if you like events like this, we'd love to talk to you about the events that we run. And about this project we're talking about, Georgia Gwinnett College, if you aren't in the Atlanta area, it's about a 40-minute drive from here. And they were founded in 2006, so quite a newcomer in terms of the higher ed space. And in that short time, they've grown to a campus of over 11,000 students. So that incredible growth, I think, is a big part of their identity and what we'll be talking about today in terms of the challenges and the opportunities that they have. So Georgia Gwinnett College, when we first started talking to them, they were already using Drupal. They had already put a ton of energy into creating great content, marketing, spreading the word about this new college they had created. And when they came to us, they had a new vision for a strategy, but they didn't really want to start from scratch. They just wanted their platform to better represent the college and to be a better platform for their staff, more flexible. And so I'm going to talk about some of the key things we touched on. We didn't set out to rebuild everything from scratch and give them an entirely new platform. We were really looking for opportunities of improvement. And the focus points that I'm going to talk about how we came to these, but the things we ended up focusing on are these 3 points. So, I think a lot of these will resonate with some of you, but, making it clear why prospects should choose Georgia Gwinnett College, highlighting the support that they have for students, and then helping prospects actually see themselves at the college. And these came from conversations with staff and from our review of the existing site. So our team did a heuristic analysis, looking at the analytics and we combine that with actually getting insights from their team. So first off, we wanted to do a better job of showing students why they should attend the college. Every student is kind of coming to their search in higher education with a set of criteria, and these tend to be, affordability, the programs they can choose. They have all of these criteria in their mind, and not every college is going to score top on all of these criteria. So I think it's really good for schools coming up with their digital strategy, their marketing strategy, to be realistic and look at the areas where they shine. So we selected these 4 for Georgia Gwinnett College, which are actually on the list of students who end up picking the school, why they chose it. And so we saw this opportunity on the homepage, where 16% of the traffic enters the site, to make these points really more explicit. They were all implied, everything was already there. They had this great tagline: find your place, find your passion, find your purpose. It's very inspirational, it touches on a lot of those points, but it's not being clear and saying, this is an affordable school, right? So we just wanted to make it crystal clear. And so we did that a few ways. So we did, in terms of because these are screenshots from the old design, we did a rebrand which does make the whole site more confident, aspirational, but at the same time, we really looked at the content. The content has to tell the story. So the value proposition about proximity, for example, being 40 minutes from Atlanta, but still having a real campus life that's self-contained and supportive. This kind of storytelling, really prominent on the homepage, was, we thought, important. And then also, as part of the new design, showing the breadth of programs, making that front and center. Another thing that we saw and analyzing the existing site was just the way that affordability was presented. Didn't make it clear that this is, the most affordable bachelor degree in the Atlanta area. That's kind of a nice claim to have. There's a lot of higher ed options in this area, and so it wasn't so clear how the school differentiated itself. So having one place where affordability is covered explicitly, having an affordability calculator, these are really good tools that students can be pointed to throughout their user journey, and not necessarily just through the website, but from people advising them as well. We also saw, and this is something I think a lot of schools can relate to, we also saw challenges with the program pages. Program pages are the type of page where the student often is making their decision by looking at that page. And we saw that students were actually spending less time on program pages than other pages on the website. And that signaled a big problem, that they weren't using that page to make their decision, and that the page wasn't really pulling its weight. And we also noticed that there were, you can see on it's tiny text, I'm sorry, but on the screenshot on the right on the phone, you can see those are all calls to action. So there was kind of this call to action overload, which was prompting a lot of students to say, oh, I'm on my program page, I found it, but here I'm gonna click away to see other related programs. And so those prompts were really getting in the way of the user journey, and we wanted to reorganize the calls to action. So the redesign, there's one clear apply link that's the most prominent one, and then a lot of information about career, highlighting the career-focused value of the programs. That's really upfront. So all that wall of text stuff has been broken down into just, here are the clear benefits, having that really good template and investing in the design of these pages. Another key thing that people notice about Georgia Gwinnett College is the support offered to students. This comes in the form of tutoring that's included in the resources just freely available. And people are often surprised by this, surprised by the breadth of support for students. And again, this wasn't something that was really clear in the user journey. So we created a landing page that the staff could manage, that just puts everything in one place and makes that obvious in the user journey. Here's all the free resources available to students. And finally, we wanted to help prospects really be able to see themselves at Georgia Gwinnett College. When we've done student interviews, doesn't matter what higher ed situation we're talking about, this comes through clear and clear. People want to talk to an existing student. They want to talk to alumni. And if they don't know someone who went to the school, the next best thing is to see those stories and to actually get a sense of like, oh yeah, that's someone I could relate to. I could go to that school. People also want to see the campus, see what it's going to be like. So what we found is that this wasn't coming through. The school actually had a big repository of real images of students in campus, and that wasn't being leveraged. And so part of our redesign, part of our UX discovery was figuring out, okay, here's how we can use more of those authentic images. Here's how we can leverage the video that was already there on social media but wasn't coming through in the website to really humanize the school. And then here are some places where we can integrate the stories right into the pages that students actually want to go to when they're picking the school, instead of putting those off in a testimonial section that folks will never go to. So if you have one takeaway from this, maybe the last thing is the thing that will stick to you. If you have a section of your website called Student Spotlights, you know, people probably aren't going to your website thinking, oh, I think I'm gonna find some good student spotlights today. I've never heard a student say that that's what they set out to do on a website. And so just taking all that content, getting rid of that section, saving yourself a menu item, and putting it right on the pages the users want to go to is a great step to making your site work better for you. Now I'm going to pass it off to Rich, who's going to talk more about our technical discovery.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technical portion of the discovery in terms of our work with Georgia Gwinnett College, or GGC. So let's dig into the overall process. There were two main areas of focus during the discovery. One was understanding the current site and new requirements for the redesign, and two, planning and prioritizing the requirements and functionality for the new site. From a collaboration perspective, it was really helpful that some of the members of the GGC team were actually developers, enabling us to more closely collaborate with them on some of the different technical details for the discovery. After our initial assessment, we worked closely with the GGC team to determine requirements for migrations, single sign-on or SSO, integrations, DevOps and infrastructure, custom modules, documentation, and training. We also identified different opportunities and risks. For example, we discussed the web form submissions and considerations surrounding those in terms of data privacy. Another area that we focused on was the different site sections, which were challenging for the GGC team on the existing site. So we really wanted to make sure we came up with a better approach for them. Next, we provided an analysis of the current calculators, like the affordability calculator that Suzanne mentioned, as well as custom modules. And we were able to determine ways to reduce technical debt and to simplify things so that we could leverage core and contributed modules to really reduce all of that from a technical perspective whenever possible. One example is the Access Custom module. We decided to replace that with the more robust group contributed module, and that provided a lot of standardization and also additional features for the GGC team. I'll talk a little bit more about the site sections and the group module as we progress, and I'll also talk a little bit more about planning and prioritizing and highlighting what we did there. One of the major focal points for our planning and prioritizing was on components used to build the pages of the site. A shared task between Evolving Web's design and development teams was to inventory all of the existing components on the site. Not only did this help us to understand the current content structure better and some of the different pain points and opportunities, but we were also able to map all of the existing components to new components. Documenting the current behavior and characteristics during our conversations with GGC, the GGC editorial team helped us to understand where there were opportunities for improvement. So in some cases, components were going to stay mostly consistent between the two different sites, the old and the new, requiring a fairly straightforward direct mapping of fields. But in other cases, there were more complicated architectural changes that required a little bit more nuance. So the creation of the new degree content type is an example where we were able to use that for a new program finder component, and that required doing things like adding a new offerings field, but then also deprecating or removing the start dates. We just didn't need those anymore. So we identified cases also in which we needed an entirely new component to provide greater flexibility. Examples of new components include the testimonial card, which will bring the campus voices to the site a little bit better, kind of similar to what Suzanne was talking about, as well as a latest news component that better features the latest in campus information. After our component mapping, we decided to take advantage of single directory components, also known as SDCs. SDCs weren't even a part of Drupal core when the original site was built. They were introduced later. And so, we were able to take advantage of them to simplify managing and creating new components. And we wanted to take this SDC approach for a number of different reasons. Their usage has become a best practice in Drupal development. Code is no longer separated into multiple locations, alleviating a lot of confusion. They're easier to find overall, and also easier to replicate. So you could essentially copy and paste code if you want to create a new component, or especially if you want to base it off of an existing component. Moving on from components, one of the key requirements for the site was to better highlight degrees and programs. Suzanne mentioned before that students weren't spending a lot of time engaging with that content. The program finder is key for the experience of future students who use the site. So in discussing with the GGC team, we completely reimagined it compared to what was going on with the existing site. We decided it was very important to organize the relationships between degrees and programs. This required a new degree content type. Previously, there was really only a focus on programs. So we added filters for the program finder to make it more usable, including keyword search so someone could type in what they needed to find, program type, locations, areas of study, and schools. And for even better usability, we added majors, minors, and all the key differentiators that would be really important to prospective students. Another challenging aspect of the existing site for the GGC team that I mentioned before had to do with the site sections and content moderation. Here you can see a content moderation flow that's similar to what you would find on a large number of Drupal sites or really on any content management system. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that and going into any of the details. This content moderation flow works really well for GGC. They liked it, but we started to see some complexity once we factored in the editorial control necessary for these different site sections that they wanted to have. So that might, bring up the question, why do they need these different sections to their site? There are various campus units that need to participate in the editorial process, and so those sections help with that. Admissions, for example, needs its own section of the site that is separate from student success. We decided to use the contributed group module to create the sections, and so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what's the impact on the content moderation flow. To control access to content moderation for the different site sections, there are two different categories of content moderation roles that we needed. One for members of the communications team, and one for the campus editorial team members. If you're a member of the GGC communications team, you need to be able to jump into performing content moderation at any point and for any of the sections on the site. Thinking of admissions again, for example, the communications team might need you to review a new landing page for an email marketing campaign and just give final approval before that goes live. Unlike the communications team, other campus units, editorial teams, should only be able to participate in content moderation for their assigned sections of the site. In other words, the admissions editorial team should only be able to moderate their own content. So what did this mean in terms of the complexity of the different types of user roles? The permissions for the communications team were relatively straightforward since we were able to globally grant them the permissions and access that they needed to all of the different sites and administering those across the site. For campus editorial team members, like admissions, however, they required a global role to be able to access moderation transitions. If you think back to the previous slide, transitions like in review and publishing content, as well as group-specific permissions that would allow them only to access the relevant portions of their site. Although there's some complexity here, we're able to leverage the system to provide members of multiple site sections on editorial teams whenever they would need it. We could just assign them to whichever site sections that they would want. And so that allowed the GGC team
to basically have the option to grant editor roles across different sections like admissions and the student success sections. So this covers the highlights of the technical discovery collaboration with GGC. Development is progressing well on the project with a target launch date in July. As Suzanne mentioned, definitely a work in progress, but making steady progress toward the goal. So please feel free to reach out and get in contact with us. But in the meantime, we wanted to have a Q&A section so that Suzanne and I can answer any questions that you might have. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Was your program finder, was that built in-house or was that like through another company?
So I think that another company did the initial version, and we're making the tweaks, at Evolving Web in collaboration with their team and figuring out all those requirements. So I guess it would be like an in-house to Evolving Web solution.
Just a quick follow-up. Are you using taxonomy to fill those, use the filtering?
Yeah, taxonomy is heavily involved with that. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
For the group module integration, are you also using that to control access to the menu and media systems? And is there any added complexity on using it for that as opposed to just notes?
Yeah, so it will all be integrated.
Yeah, the question is about the
thanks.
group.
Yeah.
The group. Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe you repeat the question.
Yeah. So, the question was about the group module and basically media and other sorts of entities that would be involved with the content, and if that added any complexity. It does. There are ways of getting everything organized and situated with the group module, but it wasn't, like the content moderation piece was more complex than getting all of that organized. Yep. Back.
When you were figuring out what the components are going to be, how did you negotiate between what the user needs are, or user survey data, and the migratability? That's a problem. So I'm curious.
Yeah, so the question is, when you're figuring out what the components are, what's the intersection, how did we figure out the intersection of the user needs and the migratability? I love that word, migratability of the content. I think when we started, and I'll just answer the user needs part, we didn't try to suggest that we should rebuild the content completely from scratch. So there was definitely overlap between the components on the existing site and the components that we're going to need on the new site. And so that reduces the difference between those two things. Then the designs, like if I didn't open up all the wireframes, but if you were to look at them, there are wireframes for some selected new landing pages, obviously the home page, and then this also the new, specifically landing pages that have some of these new needs, like showcasing student spotlights. Like, let's make sure we have a landing page that does that. So by designing more around the communications priorities, rather than just taking 10 random pages and designing them, we hope, and this project is still in discovery, but we hope that we've captured those new needs without making it an exploded version of list of components that's like who here has 50 components on their site, upwards of, yeah, let's be honest, a lot of us. So we tried to avoid that by designing towards the new opportunities. So that means that there's less issues with the migratability, but then in terms of mapping that to the actual migration, maybe, is there any?
Yeah, I think the key thing to add there is that, it's a strategic process and working through with their team in terms of what is being migrated. And so obviously we're going to look at, things like the scope of the project and figuring out how that's involved, but really the end user and what we're striving for and the business goals and all of those sorts of things are really driving the project. And so we'll figure out, how to best handle that. And in some cases, we were just creating completely from new and having to go back, and the GGC team or our team will help basically populate the content as necessary. So while that's a consideration, it's not typically the primary consideration.
Yes.
Were there any unique accessibility concerns? And when did accessibility enter your process?
Good question.
Yeah. So the question was about accessibility and when it entered our process, and if there were any particular concerns. So accessibility is always a part of our process from like the beginning to the end of the project. It's a really important concern, particularly in higher ed, but with all of our clients. And so it was part of our process from the beginning, and the main thing that we took a look at are the specifics. Like there's obviously WCAG 2.2 compliance and other things that you need to be cognizant of, but then there are also specific requirements for Georgia and the state. So what we did is we took a look at all of that, and then that way it can drive our process from the beginning versus being tacked on at the end.
Do you have any tips for keeping things accessible for stuff that's almost entirely user-generated, like the site sections you were talking about?
Yeah, so the question was if there's any tips in terms of keeping user-generated content accessible. So I think that what can help there is making sure to think through, if you're going to have like a WYSIWYG or something like that, that the users will have access to. You want to be careful about the level of control that they have, but really it's also thinking about it's also thinking about the structure of the content and like the markup. Oops, sorry. But the markup and things like that. So I think it would be specific to the type of content that they're generating, and also its context within the site to be a little bit more specific there. But those are a couple of quick off the top of my head tips. You have more?
Yeah, and a couple more tips for the accessibility. From a design perspective, I think, sorry, I'm not looking at you. Design starts from, or accessibility starts, like Rich said, from the beginning, and it's important that it's part of the design process. Like you saw a little bit, this site involved, presenting the brand in a new way, a new brand expression. So that's an opportunity to look at how accessibility is prioritized just in terms of the style guide. Often there's a lot more flexibility in the brand than you realize, and you need to hone in on, okay, if this is the color palette, like what are the combinations that are going to work, and making sure that your style guide actually captures that. And then another recommendation on the implementation side is using tools like Editorially. So for those of you who have started to look at Drupal CMS, it's one of the things I think that's really relevant for higher education in there is that there's an accessibility recipe. So you'll probably be hearing more about Drupal CMS and recipes later in the week, but definitely I recommend looking into that. It comes with the Editorially module, which was developed by Princeton. That's a really good tool for content editors. So to keep the accessibility in place after launch, because you're actually checking your content. It's a tool to check your content before you publish it. Yeah, Benji?
I think it's a very common use case to have different sections of the sites with different editors on them. And I built a small site in Drupal 7 using organic groups, and now we're using groups for modern Drupal. So why hasn't someone sort of written down the steps that this is how you do it? Why do we have to keep reinventing that solution?
Yeah, so Benji's asking, like, why does every site have to rethink moderation and how access is granted to different sections of the site? I think from my perspective, I think that everybody just thinks that their own content moderation needs are unique. Because everybody's got, it's true that everyone has different types of departments and everyone has editors with different skill sets. But I think that's in creating better better standardized tools around Drupal, which is what's being done for Drupal CMS. I think it's a valuable point that having kind of, here's what 80% of websites need for a site where you have this need for different sections would be interesting, and maybe people in this room could come up with a proposal for, here's what we think most of us actually need. Let's put it into a recipe and I'll share it. And yes, from, I think, in the back there with the white shirt. From Georgia Tech. Yes, Georgia Tech.
You may have mentioned it already and I missed it, but from the start of discovery and the ending launch in July, what's the total process and about how many pages will this website be?
Yeah, so maybe I'll let Rich answer, but the question is about what's the process between now and July? Like, what's the work left to do, and how many pages do we have to migrate?
So the rest of the process is we have entered the development phase, so we're going to be, working on those migrations that I mentioned, implementing the flow, group module, so a lot of the things that I talked about, and then, obviously there will be QA and UAT that will be happening as part of the process as well. And then finally, all of our DevOps and getting everything toward launch. And then in terms of the amount of content to be migrated, I think that in total, there's going to be new content, and so we're still in discussions with that. But overall, I think there will be a few thousand different content items. Go ahead.
And how much time have you already spent on the project?
Off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure on how much time we've spent on the project so far.
I guess when did it start?
Oh, in terms of time frame? Yeah.
You have 4 months left to launch. I'm kind of curious, how deep into discovery are you? 2 months or more than that? Just
Yeah.
proportionally.
Yeah. So the question is proportionally how far along in the project are we, since we're going to be launching in July? And that would be, I think we're a couple months in, and so we had just wrapped up discovery. So I believe it started like right before the end of the year.
Yeah, great. And just one last plug, if you like talks like this about, case studies, we're doing this Evolve Drupal event in Boston in June. You can go to evolvedrupal.com to find us there. Or we'll be at our booth later this week. You can talk to us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You should definitely go to an evolving Drupal event. I went to the one in New York, and I'm excited for the one in Boston because I don't have to travel. That was a lackluster applause. There you go. Yeah. Was it? Now they're like, we're missing out. They're going to be like, it's not even lunch yet. What are they doing? All right, so I wanted to give people time to stretch their legs, so we have about a 5-minute break. See, now they're... that's a good competition to have, a cheer competition. All right, so try to get back here at 10:20, please, for the next start. All right, everybody, come return to your seats. All right. All right, everyone, we want to keep things moving. I'm going to keep going. Yeah, here we can do the kindergarten tap. There we go. We tried. So, if you didn't read the slide, it says return at 10:20. It's now 10:30, so I'm going to say tisk tisk tisk. What's that? I like to be on schedule. It drives my wife crazy because I hate being late for things. But that's all right. We build in buffer time into our schedule, so it's all good. I know how it goes. Okay. To continue going on, we're going to have our next lightning talk from Mike Tula from Yale, talking about Yale sites from silos to shared success. So give Mike a round of applause.
Watch it not work now. That'd be great. Oh, unironically not going to work now? Oh, there we go. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to Yale Sites from Silo to Share Success, a Drupal evolution. My name is Mike Tulo. I am a user experience analyst on the digital experience team at Yale University, at Central IT, essentially. I'm also the Yale Sites product manager. That's my Drupal name. I've been at Yale for just under 6 years or so. It's my second DrupalCon. Super excited to be here. Just a quick overview of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to give a brief history lesson of what our legacy Drupal platform was and how it kind of operated. I'm going to go over our current Drupal Yale Sites product, and then kind of go over a community contribution case study. So our legacy Drupal 7 platform, it ran from 2016 to 2023. It was, yep. Essentially, it was a glorified starter kit. We had kind of 3 starter kits. The front end, essentially all the same, very minor differences. Consisted of the theme, a couple modules, a couple custom modules, and then each individual site was essentially a copy of that. I don't think I need to explain why this wasn't fantastic for us, but you can kind of understand. Every site was had their own custom content types, custom views, custom settings. They utilized some modules, they didn't utilize other modules. It was just kind of an experience. So what that became was, it was definitely a siloed development environment. So people would develop features either within the unit, or they would ask us for help, and we would develop features for them. And essentially, those features were kind of in their own silo. And if we were lucky, we're like, all right, well, this department has a really cool carousel. We can copy and paste that for everyone someone asks to use a carousel, and not ideal. So that was our biggest issue too. Obviously, with Drupal 7, the user experience was not ideal. The authoring experience was definitely a steep learning curve. Also the front-end experience, what we kind of had in the starter kit, not the best experience, not the most modern experience. Also, for our users, the biggest pain point we identified was the technical barrier. So the essential requirement of understanding Drupal, understanding HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to do pretty much anything outside of what we offered them was the biggest barrier that we experienced with our users. And then obviously that led to a ton of branding inconsistencies. People just gradually diverged from what our standards were for design, for usability, for accessibility. It was hard to manage. It was a big governing effort from our end. So that was the old platform. So with the newest platform, it was a 4-year-long project, and essentially the first year was dedicated to user experience research. So I was a part of that team, and really we had a giant report, but essentially what it boiled down to is we identified these archetypes from our users. And these 3 archetypes kind of represent the spectrum of knowledge level within our community, them being the uninformed, the intermediate, and the expert. And the main takeaways from each of these is, one, the uninformed users kind of have limited website knowledge and they kind of struggle with the platform, the legacy platform that is in general. Often mentioning that, like, managing the platform or managing their site, A, is not in their job description, and B, maybe if it was in their job description, it was like the 10th bullet on their job description. So this is not what they either A, signed up for, or B, want to do, honestly. So that's the uninformed. The intermediate user kind of has some familiarity with Drupal in general, or just kind of web building. And they kind of have some creative flexibility. They kind of have some great ideas that they want to do. But the second they kind of have the idea to do something, they run into frustration with, having to actually do the thing that they want to do. And then lastly, we have the expert user. This is the highly technical user with actual kind of understanding of Drupal and coding, and their primary job is usually, keeping up the department website. Obviously, this probably falls under some much larger departments, and their frustration usually comes from, hey, why aren't you letting me do this? I want to do all these custom things, and they don't really have those errors or pain points that the first two have, because if they have a problem, they could usually just code a solution for it. So when designing for our core users, we identified that the uninformed and the intermediate users represent the vast majority of our community. So data from our user interviews, our surveys kind of confirm this distribution, and that these users face the most significant challenges with our offering. And the expert users were the minority of the users, and they, in general, may just prefer a custom solution regardless of what our platform offers. They can do that if they want. If they want to go fully custom and just be outside of what we offer, that's totally up to them. They can do that, and they possess those skills typically to do that. So that's totally fine for them too. So when we have those identified users, our focus was early on to say, let's prioritize those uninformed and those intermediate users, and when we have design decisions, some architectural decisions, let's keep those users in mind and focus on intuitive interfaces, whether that be authoring experience or front-end interfaces, comprehensive training programs, and accessible components. And our general philosophy was that Yale Sites is a one-size-fits-most solution. We are totally okay with units saying we have a very specialized need, and we don't need to have the option, or we have the option to pursue custom development if that's something that we want to do. And our success was measured by the majority and not accommodated by like weird edge cases everywhere. So this is the new structure of the platform, and maybe the first thing you notice is that the product that we have is not the very top, it's actually the design system. So one of the things that we, in collaboration with our vendor, with 4 Kitchens, we made sure that we were designing 2 things in parallel, one being the design system and the other being the platform. And the hope and the goal was that eventually once we have the product and the Yale Sites, the Drupal environment in a good place, people that maybe aren't working in Drupal can take that design system and apply it to other avenues like a React app or OutSystems application or any other kind of form. But essentially, you have the design system, it goes down to the Yale Sites Drupal environment, and they have kind of all the options to them. Everyone is on the same instance. everyone has the same options in terms of settings and content types and views and modules that we enable and custom modules that we built. So everyone kind of has that unified experience. So this kind of going over what I just said, the atomic design system built in HTML and CSS, utilizing Storybook component library to ensure consistency and brand, working with the Yale University printer and Office of Public Affairs and Communications to understand what Yale looks like from a brand perspective on the web, not in print, very important. Also, kind of having that Drupal CMS too, right? So having a very small amount of content types. We have 4 content types, but they're flexible and they utilize the specific needs for our users. And also a wide variety of site settings that allow you to have kind of a unified experience, but accommodating the needs for our users. All that comes together in a CI/CD GitHub upstream that we kind of push updates to every couple months. Users can have an experience, give feedback, and then we can take that, iterate on it, and they wake up one day with a new release with that feature. This is just a little kind of demo of the design system that is not playing anymore. That's fun. I can kind of scrub through it. No. It's live. You can see the repo is public, so you can see it there. I bet the same thing is going to happen for the next slide, right? This is our authoring experience that you probably won't be able to see now. Let's see. Nope. Awesome. Super cool. More or less, this kind of incorporates a product mindset approach. We're kind of going away from the static, copying a starter kit, and now we have a product. So that involves a lot of continuous feedback loops. So a lot of community engagement, open discussions, and knowledge sharing, either internally or externally with our users. We host a lot of user focus groups. Those come in the forms of like office hours or different kind of activities that happens on a monthly basis. Instructor-led trainings, we offer at this point, I think it's up to 10 different types of trainings based on whether it's content building, being accessible on the web, all that other fun stuff. Those happen every month or quarterly. We have a service ticket queue. You can email us if you're in the community, and every email becomes a ticket, and a response is usually within 24 hours. And kind of the most important part is this is public development. So everything that we're doing, our roadmap is public, our repos are public. You can see all the PRs that we have, that work's coming in, and that kind of constantly is evolving based on our community needs. So the main benefits here is that we believe this is a pretty scalable and maintainable structure. So our centralized design system, whenever we have updates, whether I don't know, they say we're updating the Yale font. That's pretty easy for us. We can just update the font, and that update becomes applied to all sites. This involves a standardized development practice too, and it's really, really easy to adhere to the university brand guidelines if everyone's under the same design system. So that was the biggest thing. The next thing is the focus shifted. So we're not focusing on coding anymore. We are focusing on storytelling. We want the building process to almost at this point be boring. We don't want them to be problem solving or getting into the code. That is not our business for our users, that's our business for us. So site building has shifted from that. We have web components available for most needs and many ways to build around those needs. And if there's not, we're always open to adding more. And more or less, this eliminates the main pain points experienced by those uninformed and intermediate archetypes. And I think the most important part here is this is completely open source, and we have this community contribution aspect of this, where a user can go to office hours and say, I wish this component did this. And we say, that's a really great idea. We take that back, it becomes a ticket, we work on it, and it's in the next release. So, and they wake up with that feature without even hitting a button. So that's really big to us too. And then also the other aspect is departments who maybe have a lot of features that they identified gaps in our platform can go and hire a vendor. That vendor can contribute back, and then it's obviously much cheaper than a fully custom site. And the main tenet of this is that features developed by one group, whether it's internally with us or externally, it benefits not only the people who wanted it, but the entire community. So it's a real shared success at this point. So one example of this, vendor collaboration. So this is the website It's Your Yale. This is one of the largest kind of internal resources for our community. This is the collaboration with Four Kitchens. It's a significant kind of website. A lot of all the parking and all of the internal resources kind of run through this site. It's over 2,000 pages at this point. It's still in development. It's launching later this summer, and they have pretty ambitious features that they've contributed back. So secondary navigation through the book module, new page layouts for complex content. They have a new 2-column layout and a 3-column layout that they added. And this kind of represents an evolution in our collaborative vendor model where we launched in 2023, and we kind of were heads down for a year and iterating very quickly and releasing every month. And then we've kind of got to a point where, like, okay, we think we're exited the MVP stage, and people who have these gaps can identify them and hire people with the expertise to build them for themselves. So looking ahead, we definitely think the structure of vendor-based collaboration is the future for our platform. What is really cool is it allows for other subject matter experts with really specialized expertise to contribute back, and we can see some really unique and interesting work. It distributes development costs across all organizations. As I said, they're working, if you hire a vendor and you contribute back to the platform, I like to tell them that you're working on like step 1,200 as opposed to step 1, so it's much easier to do that. And in the future, we have the initial round of vendor projects, and as I mentioned, the It's Your Yale site, they're working on some really foundational features. We do think that's going to happen for a little bit, but hopefully eventually the feature request will be a plateau, and the focus will be more on site building. That's our hope too. And also the thing that I want to focus on personally is that we're doing a lot of focus on those 2 archetypes, as I mentioned before, the uninformed and the intermediate. And I think there is this effort that needs to be done internally with the Yale community, where there are expert archetypes out there as individual contributors, and I think there should be an avenue for them to say, hey, it'd be really nice if, I don't know, this component did this, and they can go in, make a PR, and get it approved from an individual aspect. So that is something that we're looking to do as well. So yeah, that's mostly it. I hope I didn't blaze through that, but thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. That's my email. I don't know how much. Do we have any time left? I don't. If there's any questions, feel free. You can ask now. Yes.
4 content types seems really little.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if, in your experience so far, that has made the components you have to provide more complex.
In a way, so we. Oh yes. So the question is, I mentioned previously we have 4 content types, and that seems pretty little. And the question was, are we experiencing some complexity with the current content types, and how I guess we're kind of going to manage that in the future. Our content types are pages, posts, news, and profiles. So as you can imagine, pages is pretty ambiguous. So we rely heavily on the use of like the front end and using Layout Builder to like differentiate the content. We do also rely on integration, so events, we have an integration with Localist, so a lot of the events kind of come externally and come into the system, but we do see at some point that we're probably gonna have a content type for publications, that's coming soon too, but yeah, we do see some complexity with those content types, and I think we prefer that. It's easier to lock down the experience and have less complex and less repetition with the content types, so yeah. Yes.
How do you anticipate the political landscape today, what's going on in this country, will it potentially affect that vendor collaboration that you propose? Because the reason I ask is because where I am, we often have a hard time funding vendor projects today.
Yeah. Sure.
Just curious.
So the question is, how do we anticipate our current model being affected by the current landscape of budget cuts and things of that in higher ed? I'm not too sure. We're all just figuring it out. I mean, it is nice that it's easy. The budgets are lower to do contributions to the platform as opposed to maybe a full build. So maybe that is a factor in it, but it's hard to tell. I'm not too sure. Yes.
How do you handle community messaging around new feature releases, particularly with a unified upstream and a lot of uninformed users? Do they ever get confused when a new feature pops out of nowhere?
So the question is, how do you manage the communications of new feature releases and dealing and handling, users who may the uninformed archetype with those features? We do have a communications team, which is really awesome. We definitely lean on them a lot. With any release, we do a post on our website, yalesites.yale.edu. We do an email out to all the people who are on the platform, and then with any significant feature, we definitely make sure to do some video components, some video demo that goes with the release. Also, we have our office hours that we host every 2 weeks. So sometimes if there's a big feature, we do like a highlight of that feature in the office hours. And if it's if it calls for a new training, which has happened before, we just create a new training offering, and that becomes a part of our catalog.
How well attended are your office hours?
It varies. It varies. The question was how well attended is our office hours. It ranges from, could be 5 to 6 to 7 users. It's usually the same faces sometimes, but that's totally fine too. Some of the louder users, but that's totally fine. Yes.
With the office hours, do you do this in person, or are they also like remote?
The question is, are the office hours in person or remote? They're fully remote, so they're offered through Zoom. Also, one of the things too is they're an hour long, and we drive this home, but no one really does it. But we say like it's an hour, but you can come at any point, kind of like real office hours. But no one seems to utilize that, which is fine. But that's all right. Yes, you in the center back there.
Can you talk a bit about the process by which groups and departments move on to the platform?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you support them, and how much
Sure.
do you support them?
So the question was, how do you support groups and units getting on the platform and migrating to the platform? Either from, we've had users from D7 or users from non-Drupal go on the platform. The offering is self-service by default, so we're migrating. The university is migrating up to 1,400 sites, and it's a self-service, so it's going at the speed you would expect, but we do offer, we call it a white glove service. So if they email us and they ask questions, we kind of guide them and help them, point them to training materials, or if it really just means just hopping on a call and walking them through it. That's usually how that goes. We used to offer a service called a managed migration, but that didn't really work out for the need. It was a lot of effort when we were just essentially training them to be on the platform, and they just got it after a bit. So it's really just through training. Yes, you back there.
Are y'all hosting internally, or are you guys using like Oculus Site Studio, Pantheon, Custom Upstream?
So the question is, are we hosting internally or are we using any other service? We're hosting through Pantheon.
Are you guys using Custom Upstreams?
I'm looking at Dave Blankenship. The question is, are we using custom upstreams? He says, no, we're doing regular CI up to each site. That is not my department. Takes a while, yeah. Awesome, is that it? Awesome, thank you.
All right. Well, we can keep talking about that subject because now we have some table discussions related to that. Where's my question slide? There we go. All right. So turn to your table and discuss site management. Governance is the concept we took away from this.